Hi, listeners. Today we're taking you to a truly unique city, a capital built in the middle of the vast steppe after the collapse of the Soviet Union. It was designed to embody the future and the aspirations of a new generation of Kazakhs, the Kazakh dream. But have its creators fulfilled their promises? What is it really like to live in Kazakhstan's new capital? And, most importantly, what is the essence of Astana's soul? Welcome to the capital.
Пожалуйста, подождите.
Arkatta университет Astana opera театрından hoş geldiniz diyelim.
Когда шагнул шаттл с жанром вверх в сад, загорелся зеленый сигнал светофора, можно переходить.
Hi, my name is Agnieszka Pikulicka and this is Turan Tales audio feature, bringing you fascinating stories from Central Asia, made possible by the International Press Institute. If you like what you hear, support us with a monthly subscription at turantales.substack.com/subscribe. Enjoy the story! Walking along Nurjol Boulevard in downtown Astana can feel otherworldly. On the eastern end stands Han Shatir, a giant transcontinental tent that houses a shopping and entertainment center. Designed by the renowned Norman Foster, it covers 14 hectares, about 10 football pitches. Its shape was inspired by a traditional Kazakh dwelling, one of many nods to local culture in the city's modern architecture. Across the street stretches Lovers Park, home to the boldest lover statue in Central Asia. Then comes the imposing House of Ministries, a 1.5-kilometer long arch ending with 2 golden towers. At night, dozens of lights illuminate its multi-story structure, making it glow like a scene from another world. A brisk steppe wind sweeps across the pedestrian path as you continue walking. Fountains spatter water across the walkways, flower beds line the streets, benches invite lovers to linger, and small sculptures dot the boulevard. In summer, the stretch is refreshing and alive. In winter, the heart of the city grows cold, its grandeur softened by the chill. Ahead rises Bayterek, a 97-meter-tall observation tower and monument built in 1997 to mark the transfer of the capital from Alma-Ata. The structure, sponsored by Oman, was envisioned by Nursultan Nazarbayev himself. Its form draws from an old Kazakh legend. Each year, the sacred bird, Samruk, flies over the tree of life, Bayterek, and lays a golden egg in its crown. The egg is then seized by a dragon, symbolizing the cycle of day and night, winter and summer, and the eternal struggle between good and evil, as well as the nation's renewal and future in peace. Finally, on the western end of the boulevard lies the Ak Orda, the presidential palace, crowned with a blue and gold dome, and a spire reaching skyward. Alongside Bayterek and Han Shatir, it is one of the most striking symbols of the capital. A city built to impress and inspire.
Летенеш, где тормоз? Пожалуйста, подождите.
I have been planning to do a story about Astana for a while, because, unlike many others, I fell in love with the city. It is not an easy love. It takes time, effort, and a willingness to appreciate a city so new that many claim it has no identity, and so different from the cities Europeans are used to. What interested me most was what makes a new city a city. To find out, I decided to meet those who live here, people who have watched the city grow, who have studied its history and present, and who feel it with their love. Those who make it what it is.
Ну, это для вас использовать. Да, потому что, да, чтобы это аудиозапись потом не всплыла там где-то.
Demirtas Kakov is 33, with black shoulder-length hair and very strong legs. For the past few years, he has been organizing city walks in Astana, covering dozens, if not hundreds, of kilometers on foot each week. He was born in Russian Siberia, but returned to Kazakhstan with his parents as part of a repatriation program in 2002. In 2009, at the age of 18, he moved to Astana. An architect by training, a cultural activist and curator of educational projects, he knows the city and its history inside and out.
Поэтому, я с 19-го года параллельно, интуитивно начал.
In 2019, I started a blog where I began writing about what was happening in the city, particularly about its architecture, condition of its historical districts, and its old neighborhoods. If you're familiar with the history of the Russian Empire, you know that it pursued a particular colonial policy toward the steppe. Akmolinsk appeared in the first half of the 19th century precisely as such a colonial outpost, an external district marking the advance of Tsarism.
Колониальный форпост, внешний округ, куда, получается, царизм продвигался, да?
Before Astana, a city in the middle of the steppe, became the capital, it had a long history and underwent many name changes. It was founded in 1830 by the Russian Empire as a Cossack settlement called Akmoli. Akmola in Kazakh means white grave, although this etymology is not universally accepted. Soon after, it was renamed Akmolinsk. In 1961, under Nikita Khrushchev, it was renamed Selinograd, Russian for City of Virgin Lands, to commemorate the Soviet Virgin Lands campaign, a state development and resettlement program aimed at transforming underdeveloped, sparsely populated and highly fertile lands into a major agricultural region. In 1991, following Kazakhstan's independence, the city was renamed Akmola. 6 years later, it became Astana, which in Kazakh simply means the capital. In 2019, following the resignation of President Nazarbayev, it was briefly renamed Nur Sultan, but in 2022, the name Astana was restored.
Рассказать людям, какая Астана. Астана — это город, всегда был город переселенцев.
Astana has always been a city of migrants. These included, for example, exiled immigrants, deportees, people whom the Tsarist government sent into exile here. Among them were Polish political activists and, more broadly, political dissidents, people considered undesirable, who stood up for reform and the rights of people. They included the first revolutionaries, communists, and others who spoke out against the Tsarist regime. Before the October Revolution, Akmolinsk became above all a trading city. Goods were brought here from all across the steppe, including key Kazakh commodities such as livestock and some industrial products. But then came the October Revolution. For the first few years, things were still all right, but soon the campaign against entrepreneurs began. They were eliminated as a social class. All private enterprise and business were nationalized. And so began a new stage, when the city started to develop as a railway hub.
Город, он становится, развивается до целины, именно как железнодорожный хаб.
The 20th century was not easy for the Kazakhs. The forced collectivization of the 1930s, which aimed at turning traditionally nomadic communities into farmers in state-owned collective enterprises, resulted in mass starvation. According to estimates, it claimed the lives of around 40% of the Kazakh population. The Stalinist purges wiped out much of the local intelligentsia, while Kazakhstan became the site of several gulags, where the regime sent thousands of Soviet citizens from across the country. Due to its vast and sparsely populated territory, It became a destination for millions of people from ethnic groups deported by Stalin. These included Poles, Germans, Koreans, Chechens, Crimean Tatars, and several others. As a result of these changes, Akmolinsk and later Tselinograd began to grow. While at the beginning of the 20th century, the city had only 12,000 residents, by 1945, when the Second World War ended, its population had risen to 69,000.
А потом Целина начинается, и Целина здесь вообще
And
меняет.
then Selina, the Virgin Lands campaign, begins, which greatly changed the city's ethnic and demographic composition. Young Komsomol members came here, following Nikita Khrushchev's call to take part in this great construction project of communism. Colossal changes were taking place. New sovkhozes, state-owned agricultural enterprises, were being established, and more people were arriving. In 1954, the industrialization of housing construction began. It was precisely then that house-building factories appeared, producing the Khrushchevkas, the prefabricated apartment buildings of the Khrushchev era. And it was here, in Tselinograd, that some of the first experimental Khrushchevkas, along with those in Moscow and Leningrad, were built in the 1960s.
Они экспериментали. До сих пор эти хрущевки 61-х годов, они здесь стоят. Вы можете на них посмотреть.
All of this was built on the right bank of the Ishim River. At the time, the opposite side, where modern Astana now stands, was nothing but open steppe. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Kazakhstan was the last republic to leave. Between December 11, when Russia declared independence, and December 16, Kazakhstan was briefly the only remaining Soviet state. Like most new republics, especially in Central Asia, Kazakhstan's early independence was bittersweet. The new states faced a pressing question: how to build loyalty to the nation without the ideological glue of Marxism-Leninism. What should the national idea and self-image be built on? Across the region, countries turned to their pasts. Uzbekistan revived Amir Timur, replacing Lenin's statues with those of the conqueror of Samarkand. Tajikistan embraced its 10th century ruler, Ismail Somoni. Kyrgyzstan looked to the Epic of Manas and its nomadic heritage. Islam and Pan-Turkism became shared identity markers across Central Asia. Kazakhstan, however, saw that a new state needed more than revived heroes. It needed a vision of the future. Nazarbayev, whose later rule would be marred by corruption and authoritarianism, grasped this early on. Kazakhs, to believe in the new state, he thought, needed a symbol of progress, a new capital, a new Kazakh dream. In his autobiography, My Life, Nazarbayev wrote that the idea to move the capital arose at the dawn of independence. It was hard to manage Kazakhstan from Almaty, located in the far south. In addition, the city sat in a seismic zone and was trapped in a pollution-prone basin surrounded by mountains. Expansion was impossible. This is how Nazarbayev wrote about it in his book.
However, the main reason for moving the capital was not this. And here, too, I will speak frankly. The true reason lay in the need to give our young state a positive impulse, a revitalizing shake-up. Amid the whirlpool of countless and perplexing challenges that had descended upon us at the dawn of independence, this thought never left me. It became increasingly clear. Unless we took bold decisions, unless we dared to act courageously, even unexpectedly, our country, despite its newfound independence, would continue along its familiar path, driven by inertia, and would gradually slip back into the well-worn rut of socialism. Reflecting on all this, I ultimately concluded that the right way to begin profound change in our nation was by relocating the capital. Those tense working days and sleepless nights led me to this decision.
Demirtas sees one more reason for the capital's relocation.
Потому что Алматы, как город, он уже состоялся, и строить...
Because Almaty as a city had already taken shape. Building a new capital there for Nazarbayev, I think, would have been difficult. he would have had to compete with the achievements of the Soviet period, with the legacy of Din Muhammad Kunayev, his predecessor, an important figure whom everyone still loves and respects, who is regarded as the creator of Almaty's greatness and remembered as a genuinely good man. Nazarbayev needed to symbolically create his own legacy, and of course, that would have been impossible to do there.
Символически создавать свое наследие. И, конечно же, там в Алматы это было невозможно.
When the decision to transfer the capital was made, several questions arose. Who would sponsor it? Kazakhstan was a newly independent state and, like much of the former Soviet Union, struggled with the transition from communism to market economy, inadequate infrastructure, and growing poverty. These were not ideal conditions to build a new city. In fact, in the early 1990s, the idea faced considerable criticism. Most importantly, however, the question was where to build it. Several cities were considered: Karaganda, Ulitau, Aktobe. Ultimately, the commission chose Akmola. This is how Nazarbayev described the choice in his memoir.
The main advantage was that Akmola is located in a zone that can be regarded as the geographical center of the Kazakh steppe. From Almaty to Akmola, it's about 1,000 kilometers, and from Akmola to the northern border, roughly 800 kilometers. The city is equidistant from the major economic regions that determine the country's development. There was no doubt about the economic and social effectiveness of purposefully redistributing migration flows within Kazakhstan. It was necessary to encourage people from the densely populated south to move to the northern regions of the country.
Another step was to create a master plan. Nazarbayev knew that to attract investments and foreign loans, he needed an architect of great standing, someone whose reputation would legitimize the new Kazakh project. Among the many submitted proposals, it was the vision of the Japanese architect Kisho Kurokawa that won the hearts of Nazarbayev's team. And quite understandably. It was Kurokawa who designed Nurjol Boulevard as the government axis in the middle of the steppe. He believed that the new capital could harmonize with its natural surroundings, history, and the region's nomadic traditions. The city could achieve symbiosis between nature and urban life, tradition and modernity, and between the already inhabited right bank of the Ishim River and a new city on the left bank. This was particularly important because the new Astana was intended to grow out of the existing city, which in 1997 had around 270,000 inhabitants.
Я думаю, я рад, что оно уже проходит, время вот этих star architects.
I'm glad that the time of star architects is already passing. But at the time, a big name was needed, and when the competition was announced, Kisho Kurokawa was probably chosen for a reason. I don't know, maybe because, firstly, he was a really big name, but at the same time, it was a reference to Japan as an example of a nation that had flourished since the post-war period. He wanted to become a founding father of a new capital. Kurokawa was chosen, but his initial proposal did not correspond to what Nazarbayev wanted. Kurokawa proposed developing the city on the right bank and expanding it, because the old city, Tselinograd, had a general plan based on a very classic Soviet scheme: a natural river, neighborhoods developed organically along the right bank, with streets laid parallel to the river. But the authorities did not like this idea. Firstly, it had drawbacks. The city could not reasonably stretch 50 kilometers. Moreover, the capital was already in the process of moving, and the right bank was a fully Soviet city.
With the new plan came investments, loans, and grants. As Nazarbayev wrote in his memoir, the presidential palace, Ak Arda, was made possible by a grant from Abu Dhabi. The Nur Astana Mosque was funded by Qatar. The Astana Tower Center by Turkey. Some other buildings were sponsored by Kuwait and Oman, while grants and loans came from Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Italy, Japan, and other countries. The rest was funded by the revenues from the developing oil industry. In 2005, the government approved a revision to the master plan, authored by a local architect, Nurmahan Takayev. It stated that, for logistical reasons, the city would expand radially around a designated core open circle rather than in a linear fashion as proposed by Kurokawa. Before anything was built, however, government workers were housed in temporary accommodations on the right bank, while what would later become the government district was little more than open steppe, swept by unbearable winds and swarming with mosquitoes. The government had to act fast, and the left bank soon turned into a massive construction site, working around the clock to bring the new city, the fantasy, to life.
Now, Zabaya was not very young already, so everything was done in a short time, and that's why we got what we got. Now we live and work with what we have. The scale of the buildings is enormous. We have these huge highways, vast axes. But now, around these blocks, we need to create spaces for life, because initially it was not built for living, but for political expression above all.
Before long, the Kazakhs embraced the idea and joined together to build the new city.
It was a colossal construction project that demanded masses of human and economic resources. All regions of Kazakhstan contributed in one way or another, or were drawn into the process of building the country. And this idea that we are building a new capital resonated deeply. Everyone wanted to come and see what was being built. People came from impoverished villages, looked around and thought, wow, this is cool. They told their children and grandchildren, you'll finish school, you'll go to Astana, study at the best university, and have everything. This was truly the Kazakh dream, to enter university, buy an apartment, get a job as a top manager in a national company, and make good money. That was the Kazakh dream, the one that, I think, was created.
But before the Kazakh dream materialized, Astana was still Akmola, a city awaiting its planned transformation. At that time, Rahat Nurtazin was a child. We meet at a cafe outside one of Astana's large shopping malls. Rahat arrives by bike. Dressed in sporty clothing, the 32-year-old DJ and event organizer welcomes me with a wide smile.
It's great that he reached out to me, because I was born in Akmola in 1993. I remember that most of the construction was on the left bank. And yes, we used to go there. It was a completely empty lot. Bayterek stood right in the middle of the steppe. There were only 2 buildings on the left bank back then. And for us, it was, wow. Imagine living your whole life in a place where all the buildings are just 5 stories high. The only thing taller was the Akimat, the local administration building. That was it. And suddenly, in the steppe, you see Bayterek. For us at the time, it felt futuristic.
The young Rahat soon sensed that his town was changing in ways he had never imagined. Changes that would have a huge impact on the shape of the new capital and the entire country.
But there was definitely a sense of a huge influx of people, more and more people arriving, and less space. I probably noticed it first through my father, and my father's friends from the West started moving here. They were so different from us that it was hard for me to talk to them. My father had served with them in the army for 2 years and was close to them, but it was difficult for me to connect with their children. They just seemed completely different.
When I asked Rahat what kind of city Astana is and how he would define it, he takes a moment to think.
Well, I'd say it's a new city. It still doesn't have any defining characteristics, because about 70% of the people here are newcomers. Everyone brings their own culture. So the city is just developing. It's still taking shape. I divide it into the right bank, which feels cozy, and the left bank, which is simply new, a little artificial, not yet fully formed. It's just new, still taking shape, and it still feels like a construction site. Still missing a sense of grounding. It just needs more time.
Rahat wants to play his part in making the city more grounded. He hopes Astana will one day have the same cultural and nightlife scenes as other big cities in the region, like Almaty. The day we met, he was finalizing plans for a coffee rave, a concept popular in Europe, to be held on a boat floating along the Ishim River. He was excited about the party, and so was I. Exploring Astana from a boat, listening to electronic music, to me, an old raver, sounded like a perfect Saturday night, and an opportunity to see the city from a new perspective. But aside from parties that Rahat organizes himself, nightlife doesn't have much to offer. When I ask how he copes with the wind, something I often struggle with, Rahat gives me an answer I didn't expect.
Sometimes I'm really happy when the wind blows in Astana, because Almaty in the summer is tough, and I don't like going there then. It's just too stuffy. But here, you're happy when it's like this, warm with a nice breeze. I absolutely love Astana in the summer. It's the perfect city for that season. But the other seasons leave much to be desired.
For now, Rahat has decided to stay in Astana, even though most of his friends have already left for Almaty or moved abroad. Still, he often finds himself disillusioned with the city. The boat party he had been planning for weeks was cancelled by the Hakimiyat, the local authorities, at the last minute. They claimed that a Paralympic race would be taking place along the riverside at the time and that the party might cause a disturbance. The excuse, to say the least, sounded suspicious. Rahat still doesn't understand why the authorities distrust him and his events. Having a free evening, I decided to visit a place I had been looking forward to seeing since my last trip in April, a bar called Vtaroy, which in Russian means the second, next to the famous Bayterek. Why the name, you may ask? Well, its owners, Sergei and Damir, already have another bar nearby called Uide, which in Kazakh means home. Whenever they went to Vtaroy to check on the renovations, they'd say they were going to the second one, and the name stuck. They brew their own local beer and serve it in their own bars. They want everyone to feel at home in their venues. They've created a community that makes Astana feel warmer and more welcoming. More like home. When I met Sergei Romanenko last April, he and his team were assembling a Soviet mosaic saved from a demolished building on the city's right bank, the old part of town. I saw the thousands of colorful pieces they had meticulously sorted, protected, and reassembled while Vtaroy was still under construction. It was a titanic effort to piece together countless fragments of glass into a majestic, beautiful image. Now the mosaic proudly adorns the bar's wall. The new venue is as nice and cozy as Uide. The staff is friendly and the food is simple but good. And for a moment, I feel at home. I like the place. I like the people I'm with. And for a split second, Astana feels small and close to the heart.
То есть почему появилась мозаика? Это как бы попытка объединить два берега.
Why did the mosaic appear? It's like an attempt to unite the two riverbanks, because the two banks are still very different, both visually and in terms of people. There are still people who stay on one bank and don't understand that the other bank is also their city. When we were thinking about the establishment, I'll be honest, I really like Soviet aesthetics. But we didn't want to create a Soviet-style establishment. We just wanted to bring back the feeling of what it looked like in the 1990s, when people first came here. Imagine what it was like, a small town, really small. There are huge winds, the strongest you can imagine. And imagine this town suddenly becomes the capital. All the people come here in one day, arrive by train, they're being filmed, they get off, and they're in shock. They don't know how to dress, they don't understand where they've come. Many people had never been to the north of Kazakhstan before. They step out and think, wow, what are we going to do next?
The rapid influx of people required the opening of new shops, restaurants, and bars. And it had to be done quickly.
And of course, huge changes begin to happen in this village. Some venues are bought out. There's no time to renovate. You need to open quickly because a whole crowd of people is waiting, wanting to eat, drink, and have fun. What do? You take this establishment, make minimal changes, and open it. Exactly what happened in Astana.
In his business, Sergei wants to reconnect with the history of Astana. A new city built in the middle of the steppe. A dream that soon met reality. Yet, there are not many places like his that try to create something new and unique for the city.
Here, everything that is ours is being pushed away. People say, let's do it like in England. I've been to England. I want a place like that here. Many people open their businesses that way, even big ones. That's how they think. I've traveled to Italy. I want to bring Italy home. We thought, why? We already have a wonderful city, Astana. Let's bring Astana to Astana.
For Sergei, hospitality is just as important as showcasing and developing the new culture of Astana and of modern Kazakhstan.
From the very beginning of Kazakh history, Kazakhs have been people who always welcomed others. New clans, families, new tribes. Then came World War II, when we welcomed Poles, Germans, Russians, Ukrainians, and many others. We have a tradition of embracing foreign cultures, and that should be our strength. We should make it our strong point. But first and foremost, our own culture must come first. Because when you come from Europe, you don't want to go to a Polish restaurant. You want to go to a Kazakh place. To do that, you have to respect yourself, and the whole world will respect you.
When I ask why many people say that Astana lacks its own identity, a distinct vibe characteristic of the city, Sergei has an answer. And it may not be what you expect.
В Астане, в городе почти 2 миллиона населения.
In Astana, a city of almost 2 million people, everyone goes to the bazaar to buy building materials. So when a new residential complex is built, the retail rows on the ground floor aren't occupied by cafes or restaurants, but by small construction shops whose owners simply go to the bazaar, buy goods there, and bring them back. They take the very first spaces. Of course, they'll close down as soon as people finish renovating their apartments. But when they close, I won't replace them, because there are no restaurants here. And why are there none? Because first there's a renovation shop, then a curtain shop, then something else. It's called business on the front doors.
Бизнес на определерках он называется.
Even next to Uide and Vtaroy, in the very city center, right next to Bayterek, you can find a clinic, a pharmacy, a nail salon, and other small businesses that would be hard to come across in the heart of another world capital. Because of their effortless, laid-back vibe, easy and friendly atmosphere, and excellent yet relaxed service, many visitors say that Uide and Vtaroy have an Almaty feel. But Sergei doesn't like this comparison. He is a true patriot of his city.
То есть нам интересно людям рассказать, что наш город классный.
We want to show people that our city is cool. Uday is constantly compared with Almaty. Some people often say that it has an Almaty vibe. We're against that, because in Almaty, people don't sit outside on a summer terrace in October when the wind is so strong it can knock down trees. There's no such thing there. But here, there is. That's our own separate culture. Almaty is great. We don't want to argue with that. But Almaty has its downsides. What's the point of having mountains if you can't see them through the smog? In Astana, the sunsets are always stunning because there's absolutely no smog and the land is flat. You can see for 500 kilometers. The sunsets here are magnificent, raspberry-colored and endless.
И великолепный вот этот малиновый закат, он всегда есть в Астане, присутствует.
To him, Astana has also played a historically important role for the country, something that shouldn't be forgotten.
Потому что Астана, на самом деле...
Astana is actually a very Kazakh city. No matter what anyone says, as a Russian, I can tell you that Almaty feels much more Russian than Astana. Nazarbayev brought the Kazakhs to the north, to a region where few Kazakhs had lived before. They moved here and they live here now. Thanks to that, we no longer have to fear that one day some Russian guys might come and say they're separating, like what happened in Ukraine. We won't have that kind of
То
problem.
есть теперь не будет такой проблемы.
It was interesting and refreshing to see a person of Russian descent with such strong patriotic feelings towards Kazakhstan, speaking Kazakh and seeing himself as a Kazakh. Astana is full of such people. They live and work in the capital, in the heart of Kazakhstan's political world, and they are proud of what the city has become. Despite all the problems, the often chaotic construction, administrative hurdles, and corruption that is sometimes hard to hide, they are at home around the hostile traffic of the capital, endless apartment blocks, and the brutal wind. But Astana is also a lifestyle choice for those who dream of career in the government. Victoria Abdraimova is a speechwriter and political advisor. She has worked at different government departments for most of her adult life. We are meeting in a cafe in one of Astana's grand shopping malls. Here, there is nothing strange in that. Shopping malls are the new Arbats, pedestrian streets where people hang out, go on dates, have food. A natural environment for Astana's dwellers. Victoria, a 38-year-old, works nearby in Astana's Expo Center. The futuristic building called Nur Alem is shaped like a giant glass ball. She says that this is her favorite place in Astana. I don't think I've ever met anyone as enthusiastic about their city as Victoria. We moved to Astana in 1997. I was in 5th grade when my parents moved here. But my mother was born here in Zelenograd. She is from the area. After finishing school, Victoria's mother, Irina, moved to Alma-Ata to study and was then assigned to work in Karaganda. There, she fell in love with Victoria's father. The family moved to Temirtau, a city in the Karaganda region, and got a job in a local steel plant. But it turned out that with the collapse of the Soviet Union, the economy collapsed. The plant stopped operating, economic problems set in, and the town began to decline. There were such hard times, to the point that where I remember we had no electricity, no water. Those were really hard times. Hard times required bold decisions. And then, as the decline set in, my parents started wondering what to do next. And I remember coming home from school one day. It was around the time when my younger sister was born. And my dad took me and said, "I'm taking you to Zelenograd, to Astana." In our house, someone got cholera. Can you imagine? This is how bad it was. I came home from school and my dad just packed me up and brought me here. My grandparents lived here and I was supposed to live with them while my parents started looking for a place for all of us. They bought a house, a cottage in Chubar, in the steppe there, where Bayterek stood, next to a military base. That was the outermost point of the city. The rest was bare steppe.
Это была крайняя точка города. Больше все была голая степь.
Victoria is 100% left bank girl. She rarely visits the right bank where her grandparents used to live. There, she feels like in a different city, as if she turned back the clock. In the new Astana, on the other hand, she feels comfortable.
Потом мне нравится наш климат, что ветер.
I also like our climate, the fresh breeze. We've gotten used to it, and I like the freedom. Our steppe is so endless. It's like nothing is limiting you. Astana is like a modern oasis in the middle of the steppe. Everyone around me is Kazakh by nationality. My friends are Kazakh. I have both Kazakh and Slavic blood. But I'm more drawn to this Kazakh culture, especially the left bank, because the people here are very educated, very goal-oriented, they honor traditions, but at the same time, most of them studied in Europe, so they're very modern. When I ask Victoria about the Kazakh dream, she rushes to tell her family's story, which is not a standard one, to say the least.
Мои родители здесь развелись.
My parents got divorced here. My dad left Kazakhstan even though he's Kazakh, and frankly, his life went downhill. My mom, who is Belarusian, stayed in Kazakhstan. She's a patriot. She's learning Kazakh and she loves this country. And everything worked out for her.
Учит казахский, любит эту страну, и у нее все пошло в гору.
But before Victoria's mother, Irina, found her Kazakh dream, she went through a difficult period of deep personal crisis. Victoria does not want to go into too much detail.
И она искала ответы на вопросы, почему у нее происходит это в жизни.
She started looking for answers to the questions of why this was happening to her. And that's how she came to astrology. Now she's a famous astrologer. She's a blogger. She has 80,000 subscribers on YouTube, 30,000 on Instagram. She runs her own online school. Her clients are mostly Russian-speaking, based all over the world. She specializes in geopolitics and economics. After the pandemic, we bought a house nearby, a big house.
Мы купили дом здесь недалеко, большой дом.
That was unexpected. But so is Astana. Looking at her mother, Victoria believes that one day she will also find her Kazakh dream. Maybe equally unorthodox as her mother's.
И в этом плане я считаю, что вот Астана это реально.
In this regard, I believe that Astana is a truly great city of opportunity because it's a new city. There's still little competition, markets are just emerging here, different niches, and there aren't many people.
Ниши, людей не так много.
When I walk along the Ishem River, Astana feels like a European city. At times, it even reminds me of my hometown, Krakow. Full of pedestrians eating ice cream, artists playing the duta, a traditional Central Asian lute. Couples enjoying their day. Kids sip bubble tea. When I think about Astana, I picture spacious apartments on the top floors of half-empty skyscrapers, overlooking the futuristic new capital. Older women in traditional clothes casually pay for groceries with their Kaspi app, while children rush along the pavements on electric scooters, though exactly how they deal with the ever-present sills remains a mystery. Have I succeeded in finding the soul of the city? I'm not sure, but I'm definitely closer. Thank you for listening to this audio feature by Turan Tales. It was produced by me, Agnieszka Pikulicka, and the master of sound, Eva Dunal. Tomek Stankiewicz from Tostanki supported the sound design. Amalia Ibushewa composed the music, and Joe Barnes assisted with the voiceover. Special thanks to Laila Rixieva and Denis Gafiatulin-Volkov, who kindly shared their Central Asian instruments, the doira and duta, with Amalia. For the purposes of this soundtrack, Amalia learned to play them. Finally, thanks to the International Press Institute for their grant, which made this production possible. If you like our work, please support us on Substack at turantales.substack.com/subscribe. Thank you. Until next month.